I just made a pivot of live stream to include every my platforms, but it's okay. So we roll with it, right? Like everything else. So thank you for coming. For those in house and those who are on the live stream on all my platforms. So this is called Being Healed by Creativity Storytelling Event, and as well as a book signing, and it's going to mostly follow one part. One is mostly talking about my journey and how I landed in shadow alchemy, but it starts with my own creative journey, and then you have a chance to read the chapter live, hear the chapter live, and try to try to just give your shot. And then we'll lead a little orientation exercise, and also like Q&A. So this is this it, if it is good, and we'll get started from here. So I will start addressing. You should hear the audience like thanks. Anyway, so here, I'm a journey about, as my name is Saras Villanueva, and I'll start with the meat of my names just to have some fun with it, and then we'll spitball from, what creativity means to me, and how that roots seeds root in shadow alchemy book, and the chapter I'm about to read in a couple of minutes. So hold on to your seats. Let's go roll. So, um, meanwhile, like I'll move my thing here so I can look at the audience, look at my people, audience, and everybody here. So yeah, so what's Saris? It's spelled with an X. Francesca is actually a variation of Francisca, the feminine version of Francis after Saint Francis, and Villanueva is Spanish for new village, new house, whatever variation. And I find it interesting that it didn't start out with meaning to name. It was meaning someone else's name, but someone else took the other one name. So, so my dad, out of a movie and loving a character with Sarah's, decided that, mom and dad decided to take the name and then spell it differently. That's how it is. And it was a character that had under the same name, you know. But of course, I'm not aware that they're, you know, that it was a Greek Roman name of Demeter, which is the goddess of fertility, harvest, and agriculture. And Francesca is the proper spelling of the feminine name, but it's Francesca just because it's different. Because like I said, it wasn't originally my second name. Originally, it was done because someone else also took that too. The original took that too. You know. My mom can't name that, so it's Saris Francesca. So I originally either called Saris or Saris Francesca. So even when I was born, I was very out of creative necessity. Started with, if someone didn't took a name that my parents intended, I wouldn't be named this way. You know. So even then, when I was born, I was creative out of creative necessity, and it come from a lot of careers that I didn't know about till I was, an adult, like learning. And to be frank, it's after my grandmother passed away. To be frank, in 2014, And after she passed away, due to the long effect of renal failure and just the effect of growth down, but just the long term effect. It did led to healing, but it also led to like knowing like, oh yeah, my immediate cousins are artists. Like one of them is into creative music. My sister's a hairdresser. My other cousin is into makeup, marketing and makeup, and has graduated in art school. Actually went to art school, but it's more on the business development and makeup side of art. And that's family. If not, then my family's like in accounting or attorney. So the artist comes from the lineage, and I didn't realize I was thinking that unconsciously. You know, you know. I mean, it wasn't that I knew. Like I knew that I have people point me in direction because growing up, during the time of back then there were no neurodiverse support neurodivergent people, and if there were, they usually are very wealthy or have ways to get access to state care, and or ways of IDPs, and even as a woman to have property support of anything both within the system and outside is completely unheard of. And so we just spent most of the time when dealing with the effects of that, mostly just daydream, watching anime, reading comic books, watching anime, writing stories, playing video games. That's how I dealt with it, but it also irritated my parents because I'm not doing the homework, you know, you know, growing up. Um, and I mean, I didn't know that I was doing it for creativity. It's just a way of coping with my sensitivity and being seen as a weirdo. And while like seeing in the background, not knowing that my family like is trying to fight for getting appropriate like care and autonomy for me, and going on, and that was, but eventually paid off when I eventually, Coincidence went to a middle school that has an arts program called Inside Out. And it was suggested with my one-on-one, and and it was like one day, like, hey, and it was like a couple days before the deadline of submitting an application, and it's like, hey, like I just heard about that they're still open. Would you want one? And at the time, being who I was like, I didn't want to. I didn't feel like it because I'd be embarrassed. You name it, and then I'm like this in my head. But she's like, but she, decided to apply for me anyway to get a spot. And little do I know that changed my life. That decision and got accepted changed my life. Of mostly just because it doesn't seem much that you spend like a whole semester like going on field trips after in the weekend and after school, learning how to write a play with a group of kids, but talking about issues that are important to kids. In this case, the theme that we talk about is peer pressure. And I mean, suicide, like, suicide, for a bunch of like 7th and 8th graders, 7th, 8th graders and high schoolers, openly talking about it in a 10-minute play. And at that moment, at first I went through the motions just because I want to be like everyone else, like a lot of kids, and I didn't fully appreciate them, even though I did have fun, but looking back now, it did open up something that I never thought opened before, such as I think part of it is the first time, like, I learned what it's like to be in community, but also have some sovereignty and knowing that I am protected, but also sovereignty. That doesn't come easily from a family that historically has been colonized, and then we're affected by it. And then we grew up, like a lot of us grew up working class from our country, the Philippines. And we came here because like there isn't that for the Philippines, like public resources are just non-existent. it, and it was a few years after Marcos dictatorship ended. So that it was like I'm not I mean my parents personally were okay by that when they're adults, but it was culturally like the ground basically. It's not that it was terrible. Like they did what was here, they did figure out how to make get support in life from family, from community, from their employers, their friends, like which is very fortunate that they make even in the Philippines, but the whole world place, this are not well supported in where we're from, and it was just like we gotta go, you know, we gotta go, and it's tearing up just going because that's probably not an easy thing for them because they built already their lives here already. And it's not easy for me to move when I've always been comfortable going to the country, but I we don't. It's it they're not even. It's not. It's when you're country that has been like this combination of freedom fighters, but also a lot of self like self-loading. Like it can you feel it, people like me end up being a target for that. And you know, and it hasn't changed even when we moved here, to be transparent. So it's either deal with that at the home or deal with that in the US where we at least have state support at the very least and have a chance. Have a chance of doing Filipino culture differently than in our motherland, and that that aspect of have to follow our instincts and just seek our purpose and our healing and our passion when that's not heard of in a lot of both in the diaspora and in the national motherland of our country, because for many reasons is kind of not unheard of. But now there's more now. It's just heard of now, not that my generation and and pioneers of elders who want to have a better vision of being human as Filipinos. It both here, diaspora, and in the ancestral land that made it possible to be here. Not just my parents, but the bigger apparatus, like that made it possible through the too great risk, risk, even back then, risk. And I want to give grateful because that's the backdrop of how Shadow Athlete was born, because I was born in this family that like a loving family. And yet it is also coming out of like the collective pain from out of dictatorship. Like that creative, with the creative and spiritual lineage of my family. And yet we come from a time where I was born on the day of dictatorship. And I think that's not a coincidence that aspect led me to Shadow Alchemy. And I want to say briefly about Shadow Alchemy for a bit. What I end up landing it because like everyone else, I was on Facebook and I did with a few amazing like coach and friend writers who are creatives and are doing their personal therapy and coaching practices. and are doing community work. And I saw one of them like signing like I am also a co-editor of Shadow Athlete, you know, South Rihanna, and it took a while to have my own timing not because like I wouldn't get a scholarship for it to get into, but because it's like a lot of things were happening as I was going. And I realized that it's been 3 years since I published anything. And also, what led me to finally trust my spirit on this is honestly like, honestly, it's more like, it's honestly just I felt the voice just moving through me. It just, might as well like, it's not a perfect situation, but it also gets me to a book where a form of thought leadership showed up that they could get to know. Because like you got great things and great services, my services, but they need to know what you're thinking. Like, and I realized I just need to create stuff. So I joined, and before I joined, I was pretty much like, kind of like, out of like my slumber of not writing anything for 3 years since the pandemic, and trying to rebuild my life from the pandemic. Like a lot of people, the pandemic, I lost my job, like during the pandemic, and then family health, and then rebuilding all of that, truthfully. And I think it's at the main where I have to choose myself, not from a place of not ignoring my obligations, but in a place like, if I need to share at least one aspect of my gifts. We connected, like helping others do their artistic gifts, like I do with everyone else. Why can I support myself in doing my own? And that is a part of my life. At least starts from there. And it's something that I can share. So it let through the process of honestly 3 to 4 months of writing my chapter with sometimes I did it. It's one of those things where where I didn't realize that the shadow ugly I will have my own shadow coming, like my own like healing coming up, and my own chaos coming up, which is like my pets are sick, and then deal with like, oh, I am still like dealing like living with family stuff, and also like, hey, when my fur babies, my precious fur babies, God bless them, like the 2 weeks before I was submitting, and I was behind already of that, got sick, and it's a health hazard to be sick because everyone else will get sick, and everyone's get sick, I was, oh great, how am I gonna pull this off? At time of like, this is where I had to like hold off my adrenaline and take a couple days off to take care of my cat and dog while writing this thing, and to take care of myself, but to get the pets taken care of, to get my family taken care of who can't handle, who cannot have a dirty house with them vomiting. And I was like kind of panicking, like, great, this is throwing me off. And as an autistic person who does not like changes very well, sometimes I don't like that. I really don't. But anyway, and I sit there like, okay, I just have to just know that I can make this happen no matter what I do. And so now, and obviously I eventually submitted, and now this book is here with my name on it and my chapter on it. Yay, so I made it through, which is
the beginning.
yeah, basically all-nighter that I never had to do after college, ever. Like, I don't miss fully all-nighters ever again. But the other side of of you know the shadow alchemy is realizing, I got a tangible thing to share to people. And the what am I after? I'm still exploring that question because I do know that, I am like in spirit of like things I want to write again or having aspirations and also aspirations of revisioning like what my private spiritual development and coaching practice would be like that honors who I am and that that is more like, now I got one thing and now it's like I'm sharing my 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 counseling skills, my spiritual direction skills that I want to share. I mean, but it also meant that, okay, this is an opportunity to let the business work for me the way I let my stories work for me. So and beyond that, it's still forming. It's still forming like I don't know, like a swirl of like it's still forming like rocks forming their later layers and until it forms into like a crust or a mountain. Like I just felt like that's but a little bit of after is just more like, yeah, like I'm just like forming my formation and this new formation has begun and I don't know what it will be like long term, but I know that I could feel like it's still forming. I'm not the same person as I was before I wrote, but I don't have words to say. I feel like it's like I'm becoming like a new like landscape, really. So yeah, this is like the book. So this is what my journey with Shadow Alchemy, and I am grateful for this. And this is where where I begin and where I am now. Where I am now. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's just the beginning, and so now I'll read. So let's take a. I'm really glad to go through and read the chapter with you all. Move through that process. So I'm going to read the chapter to you. It is in the book. My chapter is chapter 15 in the book, and the title is Echoes of Resilience, Story of Recovery and Resistance. And I'll read this out to you. So it is, Shadow Alchemy, chapter 15, Echoes of Resilience, Story of Recovery and Resistance by me, my chapter of my book. When I finally look up in the car mirror after the robber's fist hit the top of my nose and took my phone. Blood was streaming down on my face, oozing out. I screamed in horror and in pain. My 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 voice screeched to the top, to the top, and then collapsed into crying. Disorientation filled my body. Hand that rose from my being. with no phone to call anywhere. I'm not sure what to do. I find myself orienting by looking around as I caught my breath. As more adrenaline started to flood through my system, all I can think about was getting out of downtown LA. So I left my spot and traced my steps back to Echo Park. It took me a moment to return to Echo Park as I tried to remember my turns and freeway exits. A rush of energy and adrenaline kept pumping into me as I traced back my steps too far in Echo Park for Dragonfly Hill Urban Farm, my workplace. I turned to Douglas Street and found near the Dragonfly Hill location, which is a 100-year-old restored duplex in front of that yard. I sat alone for a moment with all the fear, shame, and anger tumbling inside. After a moment to myself, I got out of the car, crossed the street, walked to the door, pressing the doorbell. Please answer the door, I thought pleadingly. So many things were racing through my head. My face and hands were still covered in blood. The silence was so loud at the moment. My nerves were all over the place. Then I heard store steps getting louder and louder until my door opened. Drew, my friend, my activist colleague, and my then employer appeared at the door. He saw me. He was shocked to see me with blood on my face. What happened? He asked as he ushered me into the house. He then took me upstairs to the restroom and the master bedroom where he and his partner Sue slept. Someone opened my car door, punched my face on the nose, and took my phone. I replied, still Fred, I need to call my mom and I need help calling my mom and dad. By this time of the assault and robbery experience, I was filled with a combination of shocked, a tremble, and outrage stabbing below the surface. The surreal of how this essay came to be is unreal at this point. Only moments before this took place, I have been a volunteer staff meet, meeting for a public art series coaches in their cafe, spending my time talking about how we wanted to start the upcoming season. I was a volunteer staff member at the time. After the meeting was finished, I returned to my car and took for a bed and looked up the Facebook page of our friends' late night cupcake roasting party to find the address. Next thing I know, I'm back at the duplex, sitting at the dining table, eating leftover food with my mom, her boyfriend at the time, and my friends, Drew and Sue, trying to explain what happened to me. My mom kept thanking Sue for helping me. At that moment, I felt moved that people important to me were coming together. At the same time, shame and embarrassment appeared. The rest of the night was a blur and a rush. My family returned from Burbank, which is 15 to 20 minutes away from Echo Park by freeway, and drove around the city to find an urgent care center. There was no place that was open, so we had to return home till next morning. Seeking justice and recovery. So you did not go to the police station. The officer asked, the LAPD officer asked on the other line. No, I didn't. I went to my friend's house and I was bleeding from the top of my nose. I tried to explain. You should have done that first, he said. He interrupted abruptly. The joint of addressing the recovery from the incident started with a mixed bag. The urgent care we found to help us the following day was amazing. I was able to have my cut on top of my nose restitched, and so that it would stop bleeding and start healing. On the other hand, connecting with the LAPD to get them involved or even report proven to be infuriating. I was constantly interrupted and talked over every time I tried to tell my story, especially after mentioning that I just went back to my friends for help. The officer on the other line was annoyed that I didn't go to the police station first to file a report. I was just irritated and belittled at this point. The more I justified myself, the more I just got interrupted. When when I finally got to describe the attacker, I found myself quieting my voice when I mentioned that I couldn't describe him because I did not see his face. That is when the officer told me that it was just a robbery rather than both assault and robbery, and they couldn't help me more. The audacity to say that while I am in urgent care, my mother asked to give her phone back to her, giving the officer a piece of her mind. Uh, what what happened to me was considered nothing more than a robbery, all because I couldn't identify my attacker. It hit me hard. The dismissal and gaslighting that happened as I was explaining myself and asking for help, filing a police report was like being punched in the face again, only with words and in broad daylight at urgent care. There's a reason why the Los Angeles Police Department is considered a mixed bag. At the very least, a dysfunctional, oppressive institution at the very worst, by several communities in Los Angeles County, from the 1992 LA riots to the department's questionable treatment of Black and Brown communities. Not a lot of people look forward to counting the members of the police department. When I mentioned this to Sue, when I returned to work after taking a week off, well, all she could say is, "I'm sorry, I knew something like this would happen. They're not built to help us when we need them." And despite the incident and knowing LAPD's checkered history, some family encouraged me to still file the police report anyway. Being in justice movement work and knowing the history of both activist work and through being a former law and government graduate student in high school, I was conflicted about filing the report. I don't want to be the machine, and I don't want to be turned out again. What got me to go and file the report anyway was reminded that it is still worth standing up for myself and getting back at what is owed to me regardless. So I found myself in the police station in downtown LA with my independent living instructor, Ellie. Ellie and I drove together to the station so that I can get support and instruction to navigate the process of filing the police report. The conversation during the drive were healing and full of truth. What stood up is this. You can honor that things did not get worse and still remember that you don't deserve what happened to you and that what you went through was awful and harmful. My nerves were on hyper alert during the whole time I filed the report, retelling my story and naming the facts of the officer that was there at the time. This is one of the very few times where I braced myself throughout the whole experience. When when it was finally over, I finally got my copy of the report. It was still listed as a robbery rather than a solid robbery. I complained that this is still not right, and they insisted that we're leaving the assault charge out. I recognized that I got the report to be used to apply for mental health support at the Victims Unit Services and still named that LAPD failed me. I can also recognize that I showed up for myself every step of the way. During this process, I managed to get a week off until I got a new phone with my contact list updated. I utilized some meditative practices I learned from my martial arts training. weeks after receiving my police report copy and using it to file my application of victims unit, I still decided to go to Chicago to attend the wedding of my former college roommate, knowing that I would have a lot of fun there. I still get to enjoy my life while processing what's happening. I still want to be in touch with Joy Connection. Navigating the process of addressing assault and robbery, both from the legal side and the emotional side of recovering from the situation, lifted the veil that I didn't know was there. It revealed the current way of handling justice and harm is woefully inadequate, especially with how LAPD handled mine. I found myself facing cultural wounds instead of imagination that were coming up to the surface as I talk about my experience with public safety. It took me a while to get it back into my body. Whew. It started with joining a martial arts dojo and exercise boot camp. Then my petition application for mental health coverage through the victims unit went through and got coverage, which led to be able to go to therapy MDR sessions, EMDR, with Dr. Elizabeth. There was a conversation between Ellie and Sue and my therapy with Dr. Elizabeth that helped me ground in my truth. It was necessary for me to recognize that even though nothing else happened to me, I'm not required to memorize the impact the assault has on me. The process of filling out with police report and recovering from that incident and getting coverage for therapy paved a pathway to reclaim my own way of self-leadership and self-advocacy. That is breaking the binary between hyper independence and needs. So, what is your journey in facing being unheard from others around you when going through something terrible that happened to you? It's not easy to keep advocating for yourself and searching for your support system when not a lot of communities and institutions can be loving witnesses, much less problem solvers. Speaking up may remain challenging to no fault of your own. Regardless of the outcome and process, you deserve a life of dignity and integrity. You get to be witnessed and loved properly through the moments of being harmed and assaulted. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good meeting.
Yay. Yay. Woo-hoo. Thank you. Thank you.
I got stressed.
I know. Yeah, I'm stressed.
That's tough.
Yeah. Reflection. Why do we like settle just call it oriented exercise? Like the way you do an oriented exercise, it's actually learned from a group called Lobos Transforms, which specializes in organizations and groups learn not only trauma informed approaches, but learning ways to foster psychological healing and leadership in organizations. And we learn this nervous system technique, and it is a form of approach and technique called orientation, which is really like learning how to just art of noticing and just let it notice things with your senses or sound or within yourself. So we'll just look around. So for those who are watching live, you could follow along, and for those who are in person, you can also follow along with me as well. So however you want to settle is however you want to settle. Now, I would notice like what draws your attention. What draws your attention. And I would suggest if you're drawing attention, it's something that you like to look at. If you like to look at, whether in the comfort of your own home or in the cafe place right now, Like, for example, I am drawing my attention to where there is fruit over there near the thing. Not because there's a fruit, but I'm painting of a fruit. Of a fruit. Um, but if you want to notice other things, you can notice other things like the color, uh, on noticing your blanket, like whatever surrounds you, just notice. And then you move your head to find, like, notice what else. A little bit. But ideally, that is pleasant to you would be the best, whatever's pleasant. You know, you know, just a little bit. And lovely. This is lovely. And now I'm noticing one more thing. Just a few 30 seconds. Looking around. How does it feel? How is it you reacting? What do you? And I'm looking at a page right now of someone drinking coffee. Like this natural, painting is, two people like enjoying coffee together. In my case, where I'm at, whatever you enjoy looking at is you enjoy looking at, what you're feeling or hearing is you're looking at. And now, like, come back to yourself. And come back to yourself. I'll count to 5 and you come back to yourself. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yay! So for live people in the audience or who are coming by for coffee or who wanted like how was that? How that felt? You can answer.
It's I get into the meditative state.
Yeah, it's just short, just as
Or how many
it's imaginating, just oriented, but it just helps getting oriented. Like that's getting out of it, just noticing. Yeah, like it's like simple, just noticing and see what draws you, and see or noticing what you're sensing or feeling, like a little bit. That helps. Like thank you. Yay! So yeah, yeah. So yeah. So any questions? Answer any questions? No doubt. Oh, thank you very much.
you guys have any questions?
Did they ever have any leads on the guy that took your phone?
No. About okay. One person asked me like, is there anyone who have any leads about what happened to me? Who was the perpetrator for it? Unfortunately, no. They ended up like not really, finding anything.
This is the beginning of your writing your autobiography, sharing.
So the other from the audience is like, is this is now that I wrote a part of my life, is this a beginning of a autobiography or some form of memoir of autobiography? The person from the audience in the room. I don't know yet how I feel, but I feel compelled to write poems and compelled to write short stories and more anthologies to have books coming in, other dots coming in. If,
Lifetime book for
yeah.
people that share your experience, like what you said before, the way the lot of the organizations out there, the neurodivergent community is not exactly the way the experiences are coming out. And your input on that, on how you were able to got this far, will be very helpful with a lot of
Okay, I'm listening to it. I could read feedback and let me know that. Well, like I would love to hear more about the one of the artists that reflected back at me. Said like it would be lovely to hear more and more about yourself because I heard a lot about the neurodivergent communities and particularly autistic communities and how like a lot of organizations and careers are not apt or not incentivized to truly support them or in any form. And it'd be nice to hear specific like how do you, how that works. So that was give a reflection like it. And I would say that it's a lot more by acceptance and see like what is the avenue or how to talk about this that's a little different than just like a inspirational pornography because it's not it's really because I choose to be. No, no, you're not. You, and someone came in and was like, no, no, you need to do this. Yeah, you don't. I'm telling you, don't worry, don't worry. You know, but part of it is more like I haven't got the right voice yet on how the topic that that would serve a particular purpose yet. Because it is gonna have to be like a clear intention in mind, and I don't have it yet. To be truthful, because it's probably more like I have to like learn to full express, like honoring my full expression of myself, and see what that story calls for, rather than fitting into a box myself just to ironically help them, right? But I have to remember that my own story is a larger advocacy movement, but the way I put it in the larger has to honor my highest destiny.
that's expressed in the voice.
I mean,
There's a system that is dictating how it should.
yeah, I know, but I have to remember, like, be conditioned how that should look like for me. So it's, but I've studied of what that looks like.
There's like normal kids and are being turned into uh, like uh, what's the right word?
You're just
Losing their independence and they're being taught now
that,
to be more less less engaged, less independent.
you mean less agency?
Yeah, the regular kids that are supposed to be learning and meritocracy and learning and putting themselves are being taught how to be such humans, cannot be independent. Therefore, causing suicide because they don't know the life skills and coexisting this being in life.
Okay. So thank you for that reflection. Yeah, part of it is yes, yes, like yeah, yes. Oh, so one of them asked me because I know some of you are not in the audience. It's like, what sense? And they said, what is the bill? Oh, if since I know like the Bill of Rights, I know the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I really also part of eventually talking more about it's about like those socio-political commentaries that come with it because how do we ensure the freedoms that are given as community members and citizens? Like, what is that? mean? And on one level, that's what one person is asking me, like, will expound using that knowledge. That's not just my own personal experience. I actually know actually a lot of that, not just like the constitution side, but also the movement side of things and history of that, including the history of institutionalization and the history of mental hospital and also things like ugly laws where even if there's nothing wrong going on with the state, but they can use the thing called ugly laws to say that they can't be in public, even if that's nobody's business. So they can say in technicality that even if you know because the way ugly the certain law in disabled in public is kind of vague, but it means that we just don't want to see you exist. So like it's public indecency. Like even if there's nothing, but that's how like it was in local. That's one of the ways that they do that because having someone who's in any visibly at least physically disabled or physically deformed, even if we don't know what's going on or don't know, you could just assume that that's a threat. And if it's not, it's just like a nuisance, which can enforce very violently. And there is now that disappeared along with institutionalization, where society, but the legacy of ugly laws is of using technicalities and public fears to, you know, put many neurodivergent disabled people like, locked away basically, or never really found a way to, you know, live basically. But we could say like that person just doesn't look right. It's suspicious, public indecency. Like I don't like the fact that it has a deformed face or something like that, or walking funny, or having an episode. We're not gonna help them and just let them die, basically. No, literally, they would like let them and they'll be pushed and then they'll let them die, like at the very worst, and institutionalize at the very or institutionalize or if it's kind of common that if they can be institutionalized, they permanently in jail. So there isn't like any effort to make them like be a part of like a community to live like a healthy life. So that doesn't waste on any so that they can be a contribution to people around them. Like they just assume that. But that was that I could write a whole episode on that because it's a lot of research. Like a lot of research of and the big thing is that ironically Northern California has been ahead in before it was Silicon Valley, it was also known for hub of disabled rights because like they couldn't back then when public colleges were not, unaffordable back then, like they can't go to college. And they have to originally fight for that, fight for school. Like and they were the Northern Bay Area was the pioneer of believing that it's much better to have like community-based initiative, which started the independent like, living and other disability movement. But I mean, I can go on. I can go on like that because there's so much intricacy that Northern California left the legacy for everyone else.
Uh,
But we have to acknowledge that legacy that we owe.
but the uh, a lot of the conditions that are happening that they think that disabled or having this kind of issues are actually being created in the environment in school are teaching these kids not to be the actual practical life skills, but rather than more of the political correctness. They become very weak, that
But-
they become actually, not, up to, citizen and they are like getting into drugs and they're using their money on getting into drugs.
Uh,
More of being with your experience, having been able to overcome.
it's not about me overcoming or not overcoming. It's about helping them live the destiny regardless of whether, uh, so, the most important thing we should think about more is how do you teach them obedience? That's really that is something that that's segregation and obedience is really the issue, which makes them weaker because it's just easy to deal with. Like you don't want to like teach them to self-regulate in freedom, so it's easier to make them comply. Like and it's not easy instead of funding resources of qualified people and or specialized learning that can really see because there's different gamuts of disability and neurodivergency, and you could be neurodivergent where I lied either through brain injury or it's not just autism and ADHD. It's just not like that exactly. And
Some are self-inflicted.
it's not rather self-inflicted. It doesn't matter if it's self-inflicted. It's really more like much of school, regardless of any teacher, it's okay to bully people basically. And if you defend against your bullies, you consider worse than the bullies yourself. Like the zero tolerance policy that actually makes bullying worse because then the principal rightly equal like the person who defend themselves against the bully. If they didn't harm the bully, they just like stop pushing, don't hit me. It's worse than the person thing. So you already have an apparatus of bullies and you don't do anything about it, which makes them vulnerable. So of course they're going to complain. I don't want to do anything. I mean, they choose that eventually. But the compliance and submission because is very 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 young. Like and of course like parents don't know what to do, so they hand it over and just hope that they know what they're doing. And they do to some extent because they do have good programs, but it's still the basis of you can't defend yourself. You can't. You have like like compliance. It's not like learning how to internal self motivation because it's a good right thing to do kind of place. Like it's like kind of like it's like conversion therapy kind of approach to things, rather than be like, okay, what is their self motivation and their interests, and it's drill and kill basically. It's really drill and kill. So as long as like the way they try to help these kids is drill and kill, they'll just like have no incentive at all to think for themselves. Like they're just like, I'll just do what everyone else tells me. And I'm not following because I trust their authority. I'm following them because I'm afraid if I do something like then I'm a bad person. That is not a great reason why you should respect anybody or follow anybody. You should be because that person's an inherently trustworthy person.
Well,
Yeah.
Instead,
Yeah, because it's teaching them
teaching people to coexist as individuals.
And the problem with the obedience that they don't know how to disagree.
But not obedience is not the answer.
Yeah, no, because so they're like because a lot of them get bullied, so they can't. So if they stand up with the way the school does, that person standing will be more wrong than the bully because they don't want to seem unfair. So it's already set up for them. So and the parents were like wondering why is this kid like very like loud into like this mouse little person that turns into like a traumatized child and is just like a people pleaser person who can't an adult and an adult and now their tantrums are even more worse because they because they have the max and now they can unmax at home and whole hell breaks loose, right? So part of it, I think part of it is really a different curriculum and approach that is about internal self-motivation and and developing, agency and autonomy, which made me like, stop promoting the idea that people who defend themselves from bullies or have a right to get help or adult help from bullies, which a lot of them do have AIDS, are more the bad guy than the bullies and their enabling parents. That we should stop doing that. Stop doing that because that's, that already. And part of it is also like, and also like so this is what I really like nervous system regulation is taught, like Honorated is taught like how to, learn like, real social skills and action, rather than because part of the bigger skill is learning how to develop their own way of related to people, that more than just learning the practical skills, because like you could have life skills and you get crossfires with people who don't like them, not because of anything wrong, but because the people are just going to project on their whatever cockamamie idea onto them because they don't want to work their own stuff, they don't want to be responsible. And I think part of it is thinking, how do we do social skills as a priority for disabled people, developing their own social skills, and that works for them and the people close to them, that helps them be authentic because they can learn the practical skills. That's part of the side. But then how will they, when they need help or when they need to speak with someone of authority or when they have to advocate the lost in the sauce sort of thing, or if they want to have the right to have representation from someone because they know that having like an attorney or a guardian or a trusted like person, is helping them advocate for themselves, and people just want to know how to get that. And I think that's not talked about because it's hard enough to teach a practical stuff for disabled a place, but that part never gets talked because we just assume they're incompetent, and we just don't think that they are people who could be our friends and family leaders. We just assume that these are just nothing, are just like bottom of society, most of it. So we don't learn. We don't want to empower them with emotional intelligence or developing their own emotional intelligence on their terms, because then it makes them hard to be compliant. It makes them hard to control. So the part of it is, if after school is like having the practice of art of that what they want matter to them, and that they can be loved, and that they can be like they can get what they need, and they can contribute as themselves, and don't have to like lose people or don't have to lose their career or everything. I think part that has to learn. They have to learn that's ways of advocating for themselves. It's really what my real honest answer, self-advocacy, which I know that may not be people who never have to face the level of self-advocacy and community advocacy and sense of intuition that will require, because but the tough thing is that I could end this with the last, and this is a good round an hour, is that but part of it is realizing two things, like with disability, we live up like it gives them like entitlement to diss someone because of someone's like ailment. And part of disability justice is like regarding of someone using things that using collected to just really diss them, like, or permission that because I don't like what I see, like it gives me a right to just put put you down that way. Like I don't have to accept that this for me disability justice and rights. It's like I don't have to accept someone else's dissing. I don't have to accept compliance. I don't have to choose between having agency and having help. I don't have to, you know, accept the negligence of people. I don't accept that I have to neglect myself as society neglects me. I don't have to neglect myself and neglect someone who mattered. Just because I have to make decisions to center my humanity. It's really my will.
Take a lot of patience. Social media.
Yeah, so I want to.
It's very productive. Storyteller.
Thank you. And thank you.
Answering all the questions.
Thank you. Okay, one more question.
Last question. Are you going to write something for me?
I don't know yet. I haven't ventured that. I'm exploring opportunities of anthology and writing poems. I'm actually a serious person. I know someone asked me like, am I gonna have more comedies? And I'm like, I don't. That hasn't come up for me. Like,
Good question.
but I never inspired. Like, there's so many stories I'm thinking of. But I am watching some comedies like that are really, really cool.
Other people's story.
Like fiction, so.
No, reality.
I wonder if.
And it's like
I wonder if the,
horror story.
when your cell phone got taken, if you turn that into a comedy story, if that could be kind of a way of getting past it.
Someone asked me like if there's a way for to turn into a comedy story. I'm like, I mean, there's many instances where I could do it. It's probably more my my family.
Sense of humor.
I probably would write them more like my family, like that would be more my comedy. Big, yeah.
I think your mom has a lot of material.
I have a lot of materials here.
Okay, yeah, like your material. Like I got plenty of material comedy. I'd like dark. It's going to be more of a dark comedy, if I were honest, because the level of healing that is required to be is that this cannot be understated, but we can have a humor out of it because the things are straight into fiction in my family and borderline ridiculous. So that probably if I were to do comedy, I'll be like and related to ancestral healing, if I were honest, to find. I would probably go for those who don't know, like more of approach of dark comedy, BoJack Horseman, like animated comedy. That I will probably do it like anime based, like a series that is based on a true story, but change the characters and make it into like whether it's animals or fictional species or something, but it's gonna be based on like the ridiculousness of generational trauma that is like parallels with my life, like and the life of my people. Like honestly, that's what I would do. Honestly, just because if I were truthful. So yeah. I do SpongeBob. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much. I need to add that to
It
you.
was a nice a storytelling about question and answer.
Yes, so I can just end the question and the books I will not be recorded as stated, and we started late a little bit, but I want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for being here live and both in person and virtually. I have deep gratitude for this, and it's a blessing to share a bit of who I am, a little bit, and a bit of my book. So I am. No, you can come in.
Can I have some ice?
Yeah.
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 Thank you.
So I'm here. So you can follow me, you can message me. I am deeply grateful for this event and this opportunity. And I'm looking forward to a moment like this again. So thank you for being here, and God bless. Thank you. Amen and Ashe.